It was 2001. My son was 7 or 8 months old, and we had just moved to the Dallas area. We were living in Keller. And I was just laying in bed one night talking to my husband. I reached over for an itch, and I was like, what is this? And I just felt like this little pea-sized knob. And so, of course, I was like, Robert, what is this? And he's like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. So he said, you need to call a doctor. So then that began like, oh my gosh, I was new to town, right? So I didn't know who to go to. But I had met this lady the other day and accosted her at Target and got her cell phone number. So I texted her and said, I need a gynecologist. I need to find. And so she gave me the gynecologist, and so then I went, and fortunately his sister had just been diagnosed with breast cancer at a young age, so he was very, like, he didn't blow it off, because I was 31, and he took it very seriously, and he immediately sent me to this place in Fort Worth, and they did a fine needle. They did a mammogram, but they couldn't find it on the mammogram, so I had to point it out in the ultrasound, and then they did a fine needle biopsy on that, and then we got the results that it was invasive ductal carcinoma, and then I had to make all the decisions about what I was going to do and how I was going to do it, and most of my decisions revolved around my son and how that would work in our life, because he couldn't walk yet. We had just moved to Keller. We didn't know anybody. All my family's in Delaware, and my husband's family's in Greenville, South Carolina. So, and my mom's a breast cancer survivor. So when she had breast cancer the first time, she had a lumpectomy and radiation. So then when it came back, she had a mastectomy, but they could only do certain reconstruction because of it. So I was like, okay, I definitely want a mastectomy. I'm going to do a mastectomy. And everyone was like, no, it's so small. This is super aggressive. And I was like, no, I want to do a mastectomy, because I can't, how am I going to do 6 weeks of radiation and I don't know anybody, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I don't have any child care, and there's only so much you can have your family come out. So I said, I want to do the mastectomy and be done with it. And so that's what I did. And at that time, they didn't recommend chemo. They did recommend tamoxifen. And so I did my surgery. I had reconstruction. I did just an implant, because at the time I didn't have enough fat on my body to do any of the other surgeries where they can move fat around. And after nursing my son, I was an A cup to my belly button. So I was like, I'm doing both a little bit bigger. And so I did my reconstructive surgery and had both breasts done at the same time. And then during that time, we ended up moving down to Houston during the surgery. So we were only in Keller for like 8 months, and my mom came out and helped me with Trent while I recovered from my surgeries and stuff like that. So that's where it all began with my son, after the birth of my son. And my son was the big reason behind my decisions of why I did what I did, why I chose a mastectomy and I didn't choose a lumpectomy. The biggest thing was, how can I care for Trent? Because we had made the decision. That's why we were in Texas. We were in North Carolina, and we had made the decision that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom, which was a big decision, because I had always worked. I always thought I was going to be a career woman. And so Texas enabled us to afford for me to stay home. So now that's my full-time job, is taking care of this child, and now I can't. So everything kind of revolved around, what can I do? So then my mom was huge. My mom's a nurse, and she had melanoma, she had breast cancer. She's still alive. She's almost 80 years old in April. She was huge in helping me with that. Her first thing was, she goes, we gotta find a way that you can get around when no one's here with Trent, since you can't pick him up. For now, it's like 6 weeks I couldn't pick him up. So we bought this little buggy. It looks like a Volkswagen Bug, and it has a handle on it, because Trent could crawl. So he could crawl up into the buggy. And so while my mom was there, she made sure he knew how to crawl into the buggy. And so then I could push him to go get the mail, and I could push him and kind of walk him, because I couldn't put him in a stroller, right? So he was able to get in there, and he loved it. And it had a little trunk, so then he could put the mail in the trunk for me when he would get the mail. I'd get the mail out and hand it to him, and then so that made him be a part of being able to get around. And I could even push him around the house, like when I'd go to put him in bed. And then I don't really remember how we how he got in his crib. I don't remember how he took naps, but you know, you kind of.
I love that you found a way.
Yeah. And my mom was always good about that, because when I had Trent, the first thing she did when she came to visit me was she was like, okay, we're going to go to the mall because we need to find places that you're comfortable breastfeeding in so that you can get out of the house, because you're not going to sit in this house because you're scared to go anywhere. And she was the same thing when it came to my cancer, was we're going to make sure that, you know, everything you need, that you're going to be able to function when I'm gone, because Robert still had to work. He was the breadwinner, so there wasn't a lot that we could do about that. The first time my mom had breast cancer, I was in college. I was a freshman in college. I remember she came to visit me and she had drains and everything, and it just didn't click. So I think that's why sometimes when I didn't click how serious it was just my mom had breast cancer, but I'm at college, you know, I'm living my life. And I know that sounds really selfish, but my dad was there. I mean, I don't remember it as like, oh my God, my mom. But I did do breast self-exams, some, but I don't think I was super good at it. And I really wasn't supposed to start the mammograms until I was 40, but then it didn't show up on the mammogram. So I think that it's important to do both. I think it's important to do your self-exams, but also just listen to your body. Like, I could have just ignored that lump, you know, but you just have to listen, and you kind of know that, okay, even if it's not what you want to tell yourself, you still have to go to the doctor and get it checked out. So I had my surgery, I had all my reconstruction. I moved down to Houston to the Woodlands, and then I started my campaign to have another child, right? And you know what you know when you know it. And so I didn't know some things that I think contributed a little bit to the cancer maybe coming back sooner than maybe it would have. And so I went to my doctor, and first I had to browbeat my husband into having another child. And because we have an older son that's 42. And so Robert was like, yeah, no, just one. You can have just one. And then I worked my charms and I got a second one, right? So I talked him into it. And I went down to my doctor and I was like, is it okay for me to have another baby? Is there any reason I can't have another baby? Because I don't see any reason why you can't have another baby. So we got pregnant. And while we were in Paris, I started having back pain. When I was 5 or 6 months pregnant, Robert had an opportunity to go to Paris, so I went with him. And I started having sciatica and back pain, and everyone just thought it was all part of the pregnancy, right? And I was working out at the time because my best friend, I was going to be her maid of honor in her wedding 2 weeks after my daughter was born, right? So I was like working out at the Y, flipping people out as I'm like going down, like huge pregnant. And so everyone just thought, it's fine, it's normal, don't worry about it. So then I had Taylor, and right after birth I had this huge spasm, and I kept telling the doctors, I was like, something's wrong, I'm in a lot of pain, like I couldn't even bend over to pick Taylor up. It just hurt so bad. And so they tried different medications and stuff like that, and then the doctor finally said, I'm just going to have you go to, a spine doctor, orthopedic surgeon. So I went to a spine doctor, and he did the x-ray, and then he called me, and he said, I need you to get an MRI. It's perfectly, this is normal process. And I just lost it. I said, no, something's wrong. And they're like, no, this is normal. We're just going to do an MRI. And they said, they could get me in Halloween. So Robert dressed Taylor up as a red hot chili pepper, and I think he loves pick out costumes, and he took the kids. I think Trent was Bob the Builder. Maybe that was the year before. And then I went and got my MRI at 6:00 I don't know why I remember that. It was 6:00 that night. And went and got the MRI, and then they called me with the results and said that it had metastasized. And they had me go into the doctor's office, and they told me, I went by myself. I marched in there with Taylor because they were just going to give me good news. Everything was fine. Trent was at preschool, and they said it had metastasized. And I mean, even now it's emotional. And my husband was in Dallas, and so I called him, and he thought that Trent was giving me some issues. He was 3. He's like, what are you and Trent? I can't understand you. I can't understand what you're saying. What's Trent doing? And the nurse just took the phone from me. And And he was like, what's going on? And so then he called our pastor, and he came and got me and Taylor. And I didn't think I was going to get this emotional, sorry, and took me home. And then that's when the pastor called my best friend, and she got Trent from school and came and got Taylor so that when Robert got home, we could talk. And so then I called the doctor, and I said, I need to come in. And they, oh, well, he can see you in February. I'm like, it's November 4th. I will be there tomorrow. And I said, and you will see me. And so I went down there, and he was just like, he was kind of cavalier about it. And so I ended up moving doctors, but, and then I had a lot of pain, and I was in and out of the hospital because of the spasms, and it was in my lower back, and I couldn't get the pain under control. And then I remember I ended up in the emergency room one night because I was in so much pain, and Robert had rolled over and he accidentally kneed me in the back. And I was like, just set everything into spasms. And so he actually had to carry me out to the car. And so we went to the closest emergency room. And I just kept going, I want to go back down to my doctor. And I'm not mentioning the name of the hospital because they didn't do anything wrong, but I don't want anyone to take it as that I'm saying anything bad about them. So, and the ER doctor, he got the pain under control, and he said, look, Tracy, he said, I'll send you down there. We'll call an ambulance, and I'm going to take you there. He goes, but you need to be an educated consumer. And he said, and just because, this doctor is supposed to be amazing, that doesn't mean that's, you have to educate and advocate for yourself. And he said, and so he did send us down there, and we sat in their emergency room for 24 hours on a gurney. So it was not, and then they started me on chemo that night. And so that was kind of the start of the process. And then with the kids, all that was, we just had to figure out childcare and stuff like that because my mom was out of the country, so we hadn't told her yet. And so our neighbors just pitched in our church, and we used to joke around that we never even knew where our kids were half the time while we were back and forth. We were because they had a whole chart in a spreadsheet. We lived in this little cul-de-sac, and they had a chart in a spreadsheet about who was going to take care of Taylor and who was going to take Trent to school and stuff like that. So we just I think community was huge for us and taking care of us and getting us through it. I just really, I just educated myself. And so I would get there. I don't know if you're familiar with Cure magazine. People don't really advertise it much, but I got it. And every time it came, I read it cover to cover. And then in the beginning, I wasn't ready for a support group, but then I did start going to a support group. But mainly is when I was sitting at chemo, I always talked to the other patients when I felt well enough. I'd always talk, and I learned so much from them. And then at Bible study, another lady had a child. She was diagnosed while she was pregnant with stage 4. And everyone kept trying to hook us up, and they're like, oh, you need to meet Linda. And I'm like, I just wanted, for a little bit, I just wanted to be the only person in the world that had cancer, right? And I wanted to be, I don't remember consciously wanting it to be about me, but I think I didn't really need to hear about the other people at that time. I wasn't ready. And so then the doctor I went to, he wanted me to do a trial, and the nurse came in and was like, you can't do this trial because you can't get a medicine that you'll need if you say yes to this trial. So I turned down the trial, and that was the final straw with the doctor. I was like, I'm not. So I called Linda, and I said, I need your doctor. And so I went and got in with Dr. Casimir, and she was amazing. The first thing she said to me was, I have patients living 10 years with stage 4. She goes, we're going to get this, and we're going to hit it hard. And she said, she gave me hope. And I didn't get hope at the other place. It was oh, well, normally, it's, you probably have a year and a half, maybe. And they said, so you should probably get some of your affairs in order. It was very clinical. There was nothing, you can, like Dr. Casimir, and she drew out a picture of everything, and she's like, okay, we're gonna do these chemos, and we're gonna do this radiation, and literally she was like, and the other hospital put a port an outside port on me. So, I had this baby that I can't pick up because my spine is compressed and they wouldn't let me lift anything, and I've got things hanging out of me, and it was just didn't work well. And she immediately put a portacath in. Like, she literally picked up the phone and called the surgeon from the office that we're sitting in and said, I need Tracy in tomorrow. You need to put a portacath in. And he did, so she had these networks of doctors, and when she called them, I guess they all worked together. They got me in, and I got the portacath. It was life-changing, because Robert used to have to do the heparin, and I couldn't take a shower, and so then, anyway, I'm rambling. So it metastasized to my bones and my liver at that time. And later on it metastasized to my brain, but it was in my spine and widespread mets throughout the bones and then my liver. And so that's where we started, and that's when they did the radiation to my spine, and then they did the chemo to hit the liver, and we did that for like 4 months, and then they changed to another chemo that ended up getting it mostly out of my liver. And so I did chemo for quite a while, and then in 2005 it came back in my brain. I had 3 lesions in my brain. And I think when you said about hope, every day I just kind of was like, okay, I want to see Trent go to kindergarten, right? And then once Trent went to kindergarten, I was like, okay, I want to see Trent graduate from high school. And now I want to be a grandmother. So, I kind of like, because in the beginning, you didn't even want to plan next week at first, because you weren't sure if you're going to feel well enough to go on vacation, or you're going to even be able to have lunch with someone because you might be too tired. And so I kind of tried to baby step it out like that. That's where the nurses come in. They're amazing. So I had some depression while I was going through everything, and there were days I got in there and I was like, I just want a single room. And Darylyn's like, we don't have any room. We don't have any single rooms. But they did. She knew. So Darylyn was one of my favorite nurses there. And we're friends on Facebook now. But and she was like, no, you're going to have to sit in the group room. And she would strategically place you next to certain people, right, where you needed to be at. And that's, once again, kind of like what I said earlier about God putting people in your life where they need to be. And or whatever you believe in, putting you where you need to be. And so Darylyn was integral in making sure that I'd sit next to the right people, or, that sort of thing. And so I think I would definitely befriend the nurses, just build relationships with them, let them know you, so then they can help you navigate all that. And if there's a group room, try and be in the group room. But one thing that my oncologist told me, Dr. Casimir said, she goes, Tracy, there's people that are going to come around. And she said, and there's people that are going to they're not a positive energy. They just want to suck the life out of you, right? They just want to focus on the negative things. And she said, keep them here at a arm's length. And she said, and just surround yourself with the positive people. And, when you go sit at chemo, there's people that they've already given up. And you can just kind of tell, because when you give up in your brain, I think, then your body kind of follows along with that. I know there's no real medical science along with that, but if you don't think you can live, it's kind of like when you get older, if you stop moving, you stop moving. Robert was scared. I think Robert was scared, but he didn't want to say it, right? So everybody forgets about the spouse. Everyone kind of is focused on the person going through the cancer. And so he would do all the laundry. He made, he got up with Taylor every night because I couldn't lift her, and fed her, and put her to bed in the middle of the night. And then he went off to work, and we found a nanny. So we had a nanny come. Because fortunately, when you're diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, you automatically get Social Security disability. And so that helped cover all the fees that we were having to pay for a nanny. We found a wonderful nanny, Miss Leticia. She was from Guatemala. And so she would come in the morning after Robert left. And there might be a little bit of time where I'd have to call a neighbor to help me get her out of bed if she was really upset or something like that. And so then he went to work, and he really there were times there, and he doesn't remember it the same way I do. I think he just focused on all of that. So like he didn't realize how sick I was, I don't think. Like when my mom came to visit, he picked her up at the airport and she was like, "How's Tracy?" He goes, "Oh, she's good. She's good." Meanwhile, I had been in the bed, not able to stop vomiting or couldn't keep anything in me for a few days. And mom walked in and she was like, "I thought you were gonna die." She goes, and then Robert left for Paris and that day. And so mom called 911 that night, and I went to the emergency room and I spent a week and a half in the hospital because I was so sick. But he couldn't see that. And I don't fault him for not seeing that, but I remember sometimes I felt like I did feel kind of not neglected, but because like some of the husbands, they were so over the top. Like they'd show up at chemo all the time and they were constantly like, I mean, you have to deal with it different ways. I think he was exactly what I needed though, because I don't know that I would have fought as hard if he had been doing everything for me. So, but he was there in every way that he could be there, right?
What do you say to the people that go in to that same doctor, they find out that the breast cancer is metastasized to different parts of their body, they see it as a death sentence? Talk to those people.
No, I just did a few minutes ago on the phone, right? And I told her, I said, she started crying when I told her my story, that I've been stage 4 for 18 years. And I said, look, people think it's a death sentence. And I said, but it isn't necessarily a death sentence. And I said, so, you have to have hope. And when I struggle with saying you have to have hope, because there's times when I didn't have hope, right? There are times I laid in bed and I was like, I just want to die. Like, I feel horrible. So I don't want to say that just because there's moments when you don't have hope that you're not going to survive breast cancer, right? I would never want anyone to take my words and make it seem like that. I just believe that you have to have hope and reach out to other people that, like this lady did. She reached out to the organization I volunteer for, and they matched her up with me so that she could have some hope. And I think you just have to find the people in your life that give you hope and grab onto that. And I think I rambled a bit, so I don't know if I answered your question 100%. But I think it's mainly hope, and you have to make sure you trust your doctor. So like you have a vibe with your doctor, and too much TikTok, got a vibe, right? You can cut that out, right? And if you don't trust your doctor, then it's not going to work, right? And there's nothing wrong with getting a second opinion. Like, nothing at all. Like a lot of times, I think the generation now, the younger generation, is more open to doing that and advocating for themselves. Whereas I think like my mom's generation and my generation was a little bit more, you do what the doctor said and you don't question anything. But every time I went in to see my doctor and she was like, okay, we need to do a medication change. I'm like, well, why? Why do we need to? And what if I did stay with this? And she was good. She'd be like, okay, you have 2 weeks and you're coming back in. And then she goes, okay, what'd you decide? I said, I don't think I'm going to try that. And she goes, we're putting you on it. I was like, okay, but I trusted her. So I knew that even though maybe I didn't really want to change that medicine because I'd read about the side effects, I knew that Dr. Casimir could fix me, and I trusted her. But if you don't have a trust, or your doctor's like, I've heard women that say their doctor's mean to them or doesn't really seem to care about them, just change. You gotta find a new doctor. One of the things I did was I read a book called Parenting. I'll have to try and remember. I'll tell you what it is. How to Parent with Cancer or something. And it talked about, and she had a little book that goes with it about why your hair falls out and stuff like that. And I remember it said, don't lie to your kids. Don't not tell them what's going on, because they know, they feel it, right? So, but it talks about, talk to them about it at their level, right? So, we had to have conversations with Trent. He was 3, and talk to him about it. Trent had a lot of tantrums. Trent really struggled because people kept coming in and taking care of him, and he hated Miss Letitia. Because he thought she was trying to take over his mom, and he had some moments where he would just if I wasn't home, and he would just fall down on the floor crying because he wanted me. He would lay in bed and hold my hand. He'd hold my hand when I was laying on the floor throwing up. He got the brunt, I think, of the cancer diagnosis because Taylor was a baby and she had Miss Letitia. I think they're almost like two only children at this point because we had Miss Letitia till she was 3. And so I think Trent struggled a bit with it. Taylor struggled more. Honestly, I don't even think, like, cancer had always been a part of her life. So when I had the brain metastases, and the second time it came back and I had to have brain surgery, you'll love this. She came to visit me in the hospital, Taylor and Trent did, and she comes running up to me crying down at the hospital waiting room, and she goes, Mommy, Trent said they took your brain out. And I said, no, baby. They just took the bad parts. And I'm like, Trent.
How old were they then?
So Taylor, that was 2007. So Trent was almost 7, maybe 7. And so Taylor's 3 years. So Taylor was 4. Taylor was 4, and she was like, they took your brain out. I'm like, no. They didn't take my brain out. Yeah, so Taylor, I don't think she had as much. But then, when it really hit Taylor was when I had to get my reconstruction redone. Because they don't last forever, right? So when I had to get it redone, she was in 2nd grade? It was 2010. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Whenever she had it, I think she was like 1st or 2nd grade. And I had to take her to a counselor because she was really upset and she wouldn't sleep in her own room at night. And I thought it was something else. I didn't put 2 and 2 together because the reconstructive surgery didn't have anything to do to me with my breast cancer necessarily. We were just replacing implants. But then when I took her to the counselor met with her. The counselor came to me and she goes, she's really worried about you. She's scared about your cancer, And we're a funny kind of family. Like, we joke around a lot. And so the big joke was always, no, this is going to be your college essay. Like, you are so getting some scholarships. So we kind of tried to keep it more on a light note, I guess. And so I try and be cognizant of that she worries about me. And even though Taylor, like, Trent's like me. He's like super sensitive, empath, disorganized, funny. Taylor's funny, but she's very serious like Robert, and but she doesn't share a lot. Like, she keeps stuff inside, and so I have to keep it. So she's always gone to a counselor. Both my kids, I put them in counseling during a lot of it, and Trent didn't really want to continue, but what was nice about that was putting your kids in counseling when you're first diagnosed with cancer and they're young. It's a routine. So then when Trent and his girlfriend broke up and he was super depressed, he asked me, I'd like to go see a counselor. And so I found him a counselor. And when Taylor was having some anxiety in high school, so it becomes a normal thing. Like, when I was growing up, there's something wrong with you if you had to get counseling. And I think that's probably part of the world today, that counseling's more acceptable. But I think also that since when they were young, we definitely involved other people in the process of nurturing them. My neighbor, Amy, it's funny, she was diagnosed over COVID. She came to my house for HOA event, it was supposed to be a Zoom wine tasting, but we were all supposed to sit at our houses. And I said, hey, there's only like 6 families doing it. I was like, come sit on my patio and we can social distance. And I Zoomed it up there. And so I met Amy and her husband, and she hadn't had breast cancer at that time. And we just chatted and kind of hit it off. And then I was out collecting votes for the HOA, and I knocked on her door to ask her to sign it. And she goes, oh my God, Tracy, I've been meaning to reach out with you. She goes, I was just diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I met Amy. And so then so we started chatting, and we kind of started walking together a little bit in the neighborhood sometimes when she was free. And then she found out it was stage 4. And she started coming to play Mahjong. I started a Mahjong group, so I invited her to come do that. And oddly, we have 5 breast cancer survivors playing Mahjong with us. I don't know how that all happened, but none of us knew each other before. But anyway, so Amy's like, I said, I just can't find, I said, I want to do something with my life. And I said, I do my can care volunteering. And I said, but there's no more PTA in my life because my kids are going off. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm not doing any more HOA. And she was like, why don't you come volunteer up? So I didn't really come for the support group. I wish I could say I did. I came to volunteer. And then when I went to the support group, because after I moved here, I stopped the support group in Houston, and I didn't find one that I meshed well with up here. And so I was so happy that I really loved the moderator. I forget, Tina. She reminded me so much of the moderator of the one in the Woodlands. And so that's how I found it. Was my friend Amy. I came up here to volunteer, and I'm so sad I'm not able to make it tomorrow, but I really fell in love with the ladies, and it made me feel good when a couple of them were like, oh my gosh, like it gave them hope. So I feel like that's kind of a responsibility of those of us that are living with breast cancer for a long time, to help other people with it, to share your story so that they can get hope from it. Yeah. So I told you about Linda, which she passed away in 2009. I love Linda. She was amazing. And so she's the one that got me to go to the support group. So she got me this amazing doctor, and she fought a super long battle. And she got me to go to the support group, and I went to the support group, and I fell in love with the leader. Her name was Leanne, and we're actually good friends now. And she just, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Like, originally I thought you were going to go to a support group and you're all going to complain about your cancer, and it's not that. It didn't turn out to be that. And then she would bring in speakers and stuff like that. And so I really fell in love with the people. And then Leanne started noticing that there were so many of us that were stage 4, but that we all kind of didn't want to talk about certain things in front of the other ladies because ignorance is bliss, right? And so she started a stage 4 group, and that was just so awesome because we were able to talk about, wanting to plan our funerals. We were able to talk about what happens if we die? Like, what do you think is going to happen with your kids? And there's 10 of us. There was 10 of us in that group. And it was great. And some of us wanted to try, we started going to a food co-op, an organic food co-op, and we educated each other and we supported each other, and just being able to share and talk to each other. And we'd go out and have lunches. And Dr. Casimir actually opened up her boardroom for us to do our stage 4 group there. And we were just able to talk about our fears. And I think whether you're stage 4 cancer, or not stage 4, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, it's important to be around people that are in the same position as you, because your friends just want to tell you, oh, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Oh no, you're going to be fine. And you want someone that really knows if you're going to be fine, because they have no idea what you're going through. Until you've had cancer, until you've gone through it, you don't know how it is mentally, and you can't imagine it. It's just like when you have children, or you have a child, or you go through a divorce, or whatever you go through. Until you've lived it, you might think something, but it's different. It's different. The only thing that I would like to share is one big thing that one of our assistant pastors told me in the hospital was, people are going to say the stupidest things to you. They're going to say mean, hateful things, but they didn't mean it, right? So it comes out because they don't know what to say. And he said, Tracy, I need you to find the love in everything people say. So, when that neighbor comes over and says, oh yeah, my sister had breast cancer and da-da-da, and you're like, oh, well, how'd she do? Oh, she died. You're like, that wasn't what I needed to hear. And so, but you have to find the love. Like, she was trying to relate to me. She was trying to find, just like everything, you try and find a bond and something that you can connect with. And it's hurtful that she said that, because it scared me, right? Like, I didn't want to hear that. But as time went on, I could kind of try and find the love in the things that people say. And then you can educate people. But more, it's just find the love. Just try and see that part of the advice that they give you and see that they love you, but that doesn't mean you have to follow their advice.
Look in the camera and talk to Trent and Taylor. Is there anything you want to say to them when you reflect on these last 21 years? You've told me they were your hope. You've mentioned they were your why.
See, you're already making me cry.
Well, and I don't want to do that, but if you want to say anything to Trent and Taylor, what would you say to them?
So thank you. Thanks for giving me a reason to fight and live, even when I was exhausted and tired. And I didn't think I was going to make it sometimes. And so thank you for being that light at the end of the tunnel.